Praise God. Good morning, church. I'm here to celebrate a minute in Black history. It's going to be a little bit more than a minute, though, so bear with me. About a San Franciscan who I actually remember, and I think he played an important role in civil rights here in the Bay Area. His name was Carlton B. Goodlett, champion of the people. Now I'm going to be reading from the editor's notes regarding Mr. Goodlett because they were best friends for many, many years, and also this was the original owner of the paper that Dr. Goodlett was the editor of. Who knows about the Sunday Reporter? Raise your hand. I do. I remember when I was little, it was one of the only papers that really presented African Americans in a positive light in our community. And if I wanted to know about who was up and coming or what was going on or who was speaking, then I had to defer to that paper because the Call Bulletin, the Examiner, the Chronicle did not share those kind of events with me and my community. Carlton Benjamin Goodlett, teacher, physician, and publisher, was a native of Chipley, a small town in South Florida, which I had never heard of until they met. And remember, I'm Dr. Thomas C. Fleming talking. Carlton, on the campus of the University of California in 1935, we met. Can you imagine a young African American on Berkeley campus in 1935? That must have been very exciting. He had just graduated from Howard University in Washington, D.C., where he had served as the president of the student body. He came to Berkeley with the intention of studying for a master's degree, but he changed his mind on arrival and took the preliminary examination for a PhD. After 3 years of hectic preparations, he received his doctorate in childhood psychology at the age of 23. Wow. Carlton was very active in forming the Black Students Organization. He went to some or other prominent graduates and tried to persuade them to seek appointment of a distinguished Black scholar to the faculty at Berkeley. But he found only indifference from the Black alumni even. Perhaps it was because, as Goodlett had revealed when he first came to Berkeley, he was pushing too hard in the campaign, which was part of his personality all of his life. His PhD led him to become a member of the faculty of the West Virginia State College Institute, West Virginia, the all-Black undergraduate college that the state operated as part of its system of segregated public schools from kindergarten to college level. He remained at the institute for 1 year before he decided to attend Maryland Medical College in Nashville. And he fulfilled his plan to go back to Berkeley and enter medical school to become a pediatrician. He and I both met Dr. LaGrange Coleman, a Black physician, when Dr. Coleman established his medical practice in West Oakland. The three of us saw each other about every day. And after Carlton left Berkeley, we all stayed in touch. Coleman and I encouraged him to return to his much maligned last frontier of California. And in 1945, he answered the urging and returned to California permanently. He established his medical practice in San Francisco, sharing office space on Fillmore Street with Dr. Daniel Collins, a black dentist, who was a faculty member of the University of California Dental School and had a private practice. In the post-World War II era, the city suddenly found that there were generations of blacks that had moved from the South. They were here and they weren't going back. Prior to then, it was a rarity to see an African American. My parents migrated out here in 1946. Both of them, they met on the train coming out to California. So it was the time after the war where people wanted to see more of the world and they wanted more for themselves and their families. So this was part of the scene in San Francisco. In 1944, I had become a founding editor of The Reporter, a weekly black paper. I recall attending a press conference when Roger Lapham was mayor of San Francisco. He was mayor from 1944 to 1948. Afterwards, he came up to me and asked, "Mr. Fleming, how long do you think these colored people are going to be here?" I looked at him in the eye and said, "Mayor, do you know how permanent the Golden Gate is?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, the black population is just that permanent. They're not going anywhere. We're here to stay, and the city fathers may as well make up their minds to find housing and employment for them because they're not going back down south." He turned red in the face, and that was the only exchange of words I ever had with him. Goodlett started making money right away as a physician, and he was very independent. Shortly after he arrived, he came to my assistance at The Reporter. When it merged in the late 1940s with another black paper called The Sun, the Sunday Reporter was born. Both Goodlett and Collins supplied the money that made them joint publishers of the struggling paper, with me as the Post editor. Collins later gave up his share and Goodlett remained publisher until his death. With his acquisition of the paper, Goodlett launched a steady assault on racism in whatever form it took. His political activities grew even larger, not for the intention of personal gain, but for the inclusion of all black people in the state and nation. His name became identified as a solver of social problems. Goodlett was an able and very articulate person who worked with the liberal community very closely, particularly with liberal unions. In Goodlett's first year and a half in the city, he was asked by David Jenkins, the head of the California Labor School, to join the faculty. He accepted. The school was established by the International Longshoremen's and Workhouse Unions. Were you aware that, I wasn't aware of this, that blacks were only allowed to work on 2 ships as longshoremen in San Francisco? Only 2. They could only work at 2 ports. And that was a mystery to me because a lot of my family were longshoremen, and that, first of all, it was a great income. The person got sometimes to travel if they were on ship, but they came back with unique and exotic things to your house. I mean, I had a stock of bananas this high at my house that my uncle delivered to us. But again, even in that restricted environment, those people were able to flourish. And one reason was because of Dr. Goodlett. The longshoremen were regarded by many conservatives as communist, or at least as a communist front organization. So red baiters of all hues in San Francisco started whispering that Goodlett was a red, or at least a fellow traveler. As Goodlett continued to move. He served as a president of the San Francisco NAACP from 47 to 49. And towards the end of that term, he was stopped by a policeman, a motorcycle cop, when he was traveling on the road. And he said to him, I've been following you for so many blocks and you ran through that red light. Dr. Goodlett said, why did you stop me before now? So the cop asked to see his license, and he said, well, Carlton, made a mistake. Dr. Goodlett said, listen here, I'm Dr. Goodlett to you, and you're an officer to me. The cop said, get out of the car, and Goodlett said, I'm not getting out of this, GD car. You tell me why you stopped me. So the cop forced him out of the car and put handcuffs on him, took him down to the Hall of Justice and booked him for resisting arrest or some old silly thing like that. When it was found out, they all went down to the Hall of Justice and walked him out of there. He had to go to court the next morning. Lots of blacks had heard about it, and the courtroom was jammed. The cop who made the arrest avoided showing up, and the charges were dropped. Again, they knew he was a professional man and that he had not done anything wrong. In 1963, he combined his medical office with the Sunday Reporter, and I remember visiting there many, many times, very excited because it was always a hub of discussion, a lot of important black people with smiles on their faces. Even though conversations were a little heated sometimes, it was all good things going on in there. Dr. Goodlett was a phenomenal person. He touched my life as many others. And in 1994, he passed away. He was recognized by the San Francisco mayor then in 1999, Mayor Willie Brown, in a ceremony where they renamed the City Hall address #1 Carlton B. Goodlett Place. So when you get your tax bills in the mail, if you own property in San Francisco, and it says Dr. Carlton B. Goodlett, one place, come and pay your taxes here, that's recognizing and supporting and lifting up a great historian and a great reformer. And so I will be passing out pictures of Dr. Goodlett and Thomas Fleming, who was a very important person in himself. Right now, the offices of the Sunday Reporter are located on Bancroft Avenue in the 1700 block in San Francisco, and it's housed in the church. It is now operating in about 5 counties because it's merged with older black papers that have existed in the area. So anytime you want to know about the news, the real news of the minority community, go online, subscribe to it. It's only about $35 every 2 years. But think of the Sunday Reporter and think of Dr. Carlton B. Goodlett. Thank you.